Welcome to the Wisconsin Heights Drama Club production of The Trial of Ebenezer Scrooge. Please take time right now to silence any sort of noise-making device. There is also a hearing loop available for users of assisted hearing devices such as hearing aids and cochlear implants. To use the hearing loop, please switch your device to the telecoil setting and enjoy the show. If you are interested in making a donation, please see the PayPal link on the streaming link or the link in the program for more information. Thank you all for being here with us, and we hope you enjoy the show.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good morning, Your Honor.
What's good about it?
It's snowing. It's Christmas Eve. There's joy in the air.
It was a rhetorical question.
Oh, big trial starts today.
I am well aware of that fact.
The papers are calling it the trials of the century.
The papers should concern themselves with news and not sensationalism.
Everyone's going to be following this trial.
Everyone should find something better to do.
Why?
Because I don't like Mr. Solomon and Mr. Rothschild. I find them annoyingly doltish irritant in my courtroom.
They're just doing their job.
As should you. As for Mr. Rothschild, all I ever hear is, "Please state your name for the Miss Court, Mrs. Catherine Harrington. Mrs. Catherine Harrington. Mrs. Harrington, may I call you Catherine?" Mark me. Every witness.
The people like them.
The people should find something better to do. I do not like them, Mr. Connolly.
Oh, I haven't heard who's representing Mr. Scrooge yet.
He's representing himself.
Why?
Because he's cheap.
All rise, the Honorable Stansfield R. Pearson.
Be seated. Court is now in session. Entered on this 24th day of December 1844 by Ebenezer Scrooge, a complaint of attempted murder, kidnapping, breaking and entering, trespassing, suffering, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress against Jacob Marley and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Mr. Solomon, how do your clients plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Very well. Mr. Scrooge, your opening remarks?
Bah humbug.
That's it.
Yes, that's what I think of Mr. Marley and his hooligan friends. Bah humbug.
Very well. Mr. Solomon, your opening remarks?
Merry Christmas!
Objection!
Mr. Scrooge, you may not object to Mr. Solomon's opening remarks.
Well, I find the phrase Merry Christmas objectionable.
As much as you find the phrase Merry Christmas objectionable, you may not legally object to it during Mr. Solomon's opening remarks. Again, I urge you to reconsider legal compensation.
I am completely able to represent myself.
Then it will come as no surprise to someone as knowledgeable about courtroom proceedings as yourself that it is common courtesy to refer to me as Your Honor.
Well, I'm well aware of that courtesy.
Sit down, Mr. Scrooge, and not another word from you during Mr. Solomon's opening remarks. Mr. Solomon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Happy holidays! This trial is not about attempted murder. It is not about kidnapping. It is not about slander or theft or trespassing. But I do agree with Mr. Scrooge on one point. This trial is about pain and suffering. It is about the pain and suffering of a shut-up heart, the pain and suffering of a lost soul, the pain and suffering endured by Mr. Scrooge for years because he had lost the Christmas spirit. 1 year ago this very night, Mr. Scrooge's closest and only friend went to extraordinary measures to heal that pain and suffering. Jacob Marley, along with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, came to Mr. Scrooge and challenged him. They challenged him to look beyond the darkness of his cold, shriveled soul, to look beyond his vicious and malicious ways, to look beyond his pain and suffering, and to look into the bosom and the belly of the miraculous and awe-inspiring spirit of Christmas. And do you know what happened? Do you know what happened when Mr. Scrooge took a good hard look into a life brimming with the Christmas spirit? Mr. Scrooge found his heart. Mr. Scrooge found his soul. Mr. Scrooge found his happiness, his compassion, and his joy because Mr. Scrooge found the spirit of Christmas. We all saw the change in him. How could we not? His soul had new life. His heart laughed, and we laughed with him. He was merciful. He was charitable. He was a pleasure and a joy to be near. But now, the unthinkable has happened. Mr. Scrooge's heart has grown cold again. Mr. Scrooge's soul is shut up again. Mr. Scrooge's life is merciless, malignant, and malevolent again because Mr. Scrooge has lost the Christmas spirit again. And as if that wasn't enough, as if a fall of man wasn't enough, as if the souring of the wondrous milk of human kindness wasn't enough, Mr. Scrooge now wants to punish those benevolent, selfless souls who brought about the miraculous change in him a year ago. My clients didn't murder Mr. Scrooge. They didn't kidnap him. They didn't harass or harm him. What they did was go to extraordinary measures to heal the pain Mr. Scrooge suffered by helping him find the Christmas spirit. And for that, my clients should not be punished. They should be embraced and loved. Thank you.
Mr. Scrooge, your first witness?
No witnesses at this time.
You're kidding, right?
Nope.
Why me? Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Robert Cratchit.
Mr. Robert Cratchit?
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Robert Cratchit.
Mr. Cratchit, may I call you Robert?
Bob is fine.
Bob, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
I'm a clerk at Scrooge and Marley's.
And you work for both Mr. Scrooge and Mr. Marley.
Only Mr. Scrooge.
Why not Mr. Marley?
Well, Mr. Marley's dead to begin with.
Dead?
Yes, sir.
Was he dead on the night in question?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Scrooge know Mr. Marley was dead?
How could he have not known? Mr. Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Mr. Scrooge was his sole friend and his sole mourner.
So, on the night in question, old Marley was as dead as a doornail.
Objection!
Sustained. Mr. Rothschild, we are well aware that Mr. Marley was dead.
Your Honor, this must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from this trial we're about to undertake. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the show began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night than there would be any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot just to frighten his son's weak mind.
Thank you for the literary lesson. You've made your point. Get on with it.
Bob, what kind of a man would you say Mr. Scrooge is?
Well, he is thrifty.
Oh, Bob, what a type is
Order!
the grindstone he is.
Who is this woman?
Kindly remove her from
What is she
my
doing in here? Get her out of here! Who is this
With
wo-
no ceiling
Order!
struck out genuine fire.
Let me hear another word from any of you and I'll have the lot of you arrested for contempt. Mr. Connolly, lock the door. I'll have no more interruptions. Mr. Rothschild?
Bob, would you agree with your wife's outburst?
Objection!
Sustained. Mr. Rothschild, you shall not encourage contemptible behavior.
Bob, how long have you worked at Scrooge and Marley's?
10 years.
In those 10 years, have you and Mr. Scrooge ever had a drink together after work?
No.
Ever had him over for dinner?
No.
Have you ever had dinner at Mr. Scrooge's house?
Mr. Scrooge is solitary and self-contained and secretive as an oyster.
Objection!
Establishing character, Your Honor.
Be quick about it. Overruled.
Bob, do you remember where you were on the night in question?
Yes, sir, I was at work.
Of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve you were working?
Yes, I had to work the whole day.
Do you recall what the day was like?
Yes. I distinctly remember the city clock striking 3, but it was quite dark already, and candles were flaring in the neighboring offices like ruddy smears upon the wretched brown air. It was extremely foggy that night, And I remember thinking to myself that to see fog pouring in, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by and was brewing on a large scale.
It was quite cold that day, as I recall.
Yes, it was cold, bleak, biting weather.
But you had the warmth of your office to protect you from the elements.
Not quite.
No? You didn't have a fire blazing inside the successful offices of Scrooge and Marley's?
No, sir. External heat and cold have very little influence on Mr. Scrooge. It seems that no warmth warms him, nor wintry wind chills him.
But surely you had some sort of fire burn.
A really small one.
How small?
1 coal.
1 coal?
Yes, sir.
That hardly constitutes a fire.
Mr. Scrooge's order.
Did you ask if you could put more coal on the fire?
Oh, I did.
And he said,
He said if I would take 1 more coal from the coal box, my services would no longer be needed.
no more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Mr. Cratchit, did you just say that you worked on Christmas Day?
No, sir. I said I worked on Christmas Eve.
Oh, I thought you said that you worked on Christmas Day.
No, you gave me Christmas Day off, remember?
Oh, yes, I remember. No more questions.
You may step down. Mr. Solomon?
I'd like to call to the stand Mrs. Frederica Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Frederica Fitzpatrick?
Would you please state your full name for the court?
Frederica Samantha Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick, may I call you Frederica?
Fred is fine.
Fred, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
Mr. Scrooge is my uncle.
By birth or by marriage?
By birth. My mother and he were brother and sister.
Were? Is your mother deceased?
Yes.
I'm sorry. On the night in question, did you see your uncle?
Yes. I visited him at his office.
And what kind of mood was your uncle in when you saw him that afternoon?
His usual mood. Grumpy, crotchety, disagreeable.
Did your visit cheer him up?
No, if anything, it made him more disagreeable.
Did you come bearing bad news?
I came to wish him a Merry Christmas and invite him to Christmas dinner.
And this made him more disagreeable.
My uncle has taken a keen dislike to Christmas.
Any reason why?
He's never said.
Did he accept your invitation to dinner?
No, as usual, he declined.
As usual.
I visit him every Christmas and invite him to dinner, and every year he says no.
Because of his dislike for Christmas?
Or because of his dislike for me.
Have you done anything to warrant this behavior?
We've never had a quarrel that I can recall.
And yet, you return every Christmas to invite him to dinner, even though you receive the same response every time?
I've always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, charitable time. The only time I know in the long calendar year when men and women seem consent to open their hearts to each other, as if they really were fellow creatures to the grave, rather than just people on other journeys. Christmas time has done me good, and it will always do me good if I say God bless it.
Bravo!
Mr. Connolly, another word and you will keep your Christmas by losing your situation.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge?
You're quite a powerful speaker, madame. I wonder why you don't go into Parliament.
Objection!
Sustained.
It was
Mr.
a
Scrooge?
compliment.
I didn't like your tone.
Miss Wainwright, in the past 10 years, how many times have you come to visit me?
Oh, that's easy. 10.
10 times? You're sure?
Yes?
You're positive?
Yes, every Christmas Eve.
Never on New Year's Eve?
No.
Boxing Day?
No.
Guy Fawkes Day?
No.
St. George's Day?
No.
Christine Autumn? May Day?
No.
No. Surely on my birthday?
I'm afraid I don't even know when it is.
Ah, well, I suppose you're right. 10 times, 10 years, 10 visits. In your diatribe about Christmas.
Objection!
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
In your speech about Christmas, you said that Christmas time is the only time when men and women can open their hearts to each other with caring and generosity. Did you say that?
Yes?
This caring and generosity is what you'd call the Christmas spirit?
Yes.
The spirit that you believe I do not possess?
Yes.
Do you believe I possess this spirit?
I do.
Do you believe you possess this spirit more than most people?
More than you.
Where does your Christmas spirit go the rest of the 364 days a year?
It doesn't go anywhere. It's always inside me.
Yet you only visit me on Christmas Day.
I make those visits in homage to the Christmas spirit.
Yet you just said that your Christmas is always inside of you.
Well,
So why don't you visit me any other time of the year? Precisely. No more questions.
You may step down. Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call to the stand Miss Sarah Wainwright, Your Honor.
Miss Sarah Wainwright?
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Sarah Ann Wainwright.
Miss Wainwright, may I call you Sarah?
Yes, sir, you may.
Sarah, did you see Mr. Scrooge on the night in question?
I most certainly did.
And where was that?
At his office.
And what business brought you to Mr. Scrooge's office?
Well, at Christmas time, I go door to door to the various businesses in and around the London area, soliciting money for the poor and destitute.
Rather noble of you.
Objection.
Overruled.
But
Sustained. Mr. Rothschild, please keep your opinions to yourself.
Thank you.
Sarah, what charitable organization do you work for?
Oh, I don't work for an organization. I do this on my own.
You've taken it upon yourself to help the poor?
Yes, I have.
And what prompted you to undertake this cause?
Several Christmases ago, we were having a party at our home. Someone said it was snowing, so we all rushed to the front window to look out. And when we did, there in the street stood a homeless family, just standing there. They looked so homeless. You know, cold, hungry, sad. They were just staring at us, and I couldn't help staring right back. We had some leftover food, so I put on my coat, my hat, my mittens, and my new mink muffler and took the food out to them. I wished them a Merry Christmas, and they were so grateful. I felt a warmth inside me, and in that moment I realized Christmas is more than parties and presents and pretty dresses. Oh, sure, that's a big part of it, but it's more than that. So every Christmas, when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices, I trod door to door to raise funds to provide the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. I believe everyone is entitled to that on Christmas.
How many people benefit from your efforts?
Not nearly enough. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries, and hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts.
Out of everyone you solicit, approximately how many give money?
Nearly everyone. At Christmas time, abundance truly rejoices. Even your people give a little something.
What can I say? We're givers. On the night in question, how much did Mr. Scrooge give you?
Nothing.
He wished to remain anonymous.
He wished to be left alone.
Alone?
That was his wish.
Mr. Scrooge didn't give you any money?
No, he did not.
Did he give a reason why?
It was Mr. Scrooge's opinion that since he pays the taxes for the prisons and workhouses, that those who are badly off should go there.
Should they?
It is well documented that the establishments to which Mr. Scrooge was referring scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude. Frankly, many people would rather die than go to the workhouses. And when I told him that, he said,
Yes?
He said, and I quote, "If they had rather die, then they had better do so and decrease the surplus population."
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness?
Miss Wainwright, how long have you lived in London?
My entire life, born and raised here.
So you're fairly familiar then with the city.
Yes, I am.
How would you describe the weather here?
Perfect.
Perfect if you're a duck. Ducks love it here. It's cold and wet.
Mr. Connolly, please refrain from sharing your opinions with the courtroom, or the ducks won't be the only things that are cold and wet.
Mr. Conley thinks it's cold and wet.
Objection!
Sustained. Mr. Scrooge, Mr. Connolly's want-witted opinions shall not be taken into account.
Fine. I think it's cold and wet. Rainy and foggy. Don't you agree, Miss Wainwright?
Yes, well, I agree. We have our share of that kind of weather.
Oh, share. More like a monopoly. Miss Wainwright, what's the average temperature in February?
Objection. We're not here to discuss the annual weather report.
Mr. Scrooge, is there a point to this questioning?
I'm getting to it.
Be quick about it. Overruled.
What's the average temperature in February?
I wouldn't know.
You should know. You've lived here all your life.
I know generally. I don't know exact figures.
Well, generally will do. Does it ever get below freezing?
Yes, sometimes.
More than half the days?
It depends on the year.
Generally.
Generally, yes, I'd say so.
Does it ever sleet?
Yes.
Does it ever snow?
Yes.
Have you ever seen it snow in October?
Yes, I have.
How about March?
Yes.
April?
A few years ago, it snowed on Easter Sunday.
Has to be fairly cold to snow, doesn't it?
Yes.
October to April. That's 7 months, more than half the year. And let's be honest, the next 5 months are equally terrible. It's rainy, foggy, terrible weather. The taxes that I pay every single week help fund the poor for the means of warmth and provide food to them, not just one day out of the year for charity. So in the long term, Miss Wainwright, who's doing more for the poor, you or me? No more questions.
You may step down. Your witness, Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to.
Mr. Scrooge, you were given an opportunity.
Your Honor, if Mr. Scrooge would like to call a witness, we shall happily yield the floor to him.
Very well.
I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Jacob Marley.
Mr. Jacob Marley? Mr. Jacob Marley!
Will you please state who you are?
Who I was.
Rather particular for a shadow.
Objection.
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
Fine. Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
In life? When'd you die?
8 years ago. 8 years ago this very night, Christmas Eve.
Wasn't a very Merry Christmas for you, was it?
Objection.
Sustained, Mr. Scrooge.
Yes, I know. Mr. Marley, in the past 8 years, have we ever seen each other?
We have seen each other twice, but I have seen you many times.
No, and where was that?
As part of my penance, I am forced to sit invisible beside you for many and many a day.
Mr. Marley, that's known as stalking.
Objection.
Overruled.
Those 2 times we saw each other, Mr. Marley, when was that?
A year ago today.
Both on the same day?
Yes.
And where was the first time we saw each other?
At your front door.
And do you recall where I was standing?
On your doorstep.
And where were you?
I was in your door knocker.
You're my door knocker. It's a rather peculiar place to meet someone. I mean, I understand meeting someone at your front doorstep, but not your door knocker. Why were you there? Why were you there, Mr. Marley? I couldn't hear your answer.
I don't know.
Mr. Marley, do you recall what I did next?
You went inside.
And where did... You were left in the door knocker then, right?
Yeah, no, I had already left the door knocker.
Without being invited in?
Yes?
Mr. Marley, that's known as trespassing.
Objection.
Overruled.
Mr. Marley, where did we see each other next?
In your bedchamber.
Once again, Mr. Marley, I don't remember inviting you in.
I came to offer you a chance and hope of escaping my fate.
Mr. Marley, to enter my bedroom chamber, you had to go through a double-locked door, did you not?
A chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
Mr. Marley, did you or did you not enter my bedroom door through a double-locked door?
A chance and hope.
Mr. Marley, answer the question. Did you or did you not enter Mr. Scrooge's bedchamber uninvited through a double-locked door?
I did.
And what was this chance and hope you were offering me that night?
A visitation of 3 spirits who...
A visitation? No, Mr. Marley, your exact words I recall were, "You will be haunted by 3 ghosts." Oh! Does that sound correct, Mr. Marley?
Maybe.
Yes or no, Mr. Marley?
Yes.
You will be haunted by 3 ghosts. Not you will be visited by 3 ghosts. You will be haunted. Mr. Marley, those are 2 distinct different words. One implies you bopping in for a bit of tea. The other one implies and conjures ultimate horrors and terrors and eldritch beings. Mr. Marley, you broke into my house that night to threaten, terrorize, and haunt me.
It was for your own good.
If it was for my own good, then why did you wait 7 months?
As part of my penance, I am forced to travel the world.
Yet you just admitted earlier that you stood by my side many and many of a day. So which is it, Mr. Marley? No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness. Mr. Connolly now. Your witness, Mr. Solomon.
I would like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas present.
The ghost of Christmas present.
Perhaps if the ghost of Christmas present isn't available, Mr. Scrooge would like to call a witness instead?
Yes. I would like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas past.
The ghost of Christmas past.
Will you please state your full name to the court?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
Were you one of the 3 ghosts that were foretold to me by Mr. Marley?
I am
And what was your business in my bedroom that night?
your welfare.
Don't you think a night of more unbroken peace would have been more conducive to that end?
Your reclamation, then.
And that included kidnapping me.
Objection. Overruled.
My client was not kidnapped.
I'm not mistaken. I was
Sit down.
kidnapped. I was taken out of my house against my own volition.
Look at my client, Your Honor. She's as gentle as a child.
As gentle as a woman's touch, her hand was not to be unbroken.
Order! At the end of this trial, I will determine whether Mr. Scrooge did or did not go of his own volition.
Spirit, did you or did you not take me, clad only in my nightgown, cap, and slippers, out through my bedroom window and out of my house?
Yes.
Subjecting me, a mere mortal, for the great possibility of falling to my death?
With my hand upon your heart, you were more than upheld.
I don't know what things are called in your little netherworld, Spirit, but that's known as kidnapping and endangerment. No more questions.
Mr. Rothschild, your witness.
Ghost of Christmas past. May I call you past?
Oh, shoot.
You may.
You said the reason you visited Mr. Scrooge was his reclamation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was Mr. Scrooge in need of a reclamation?
Oh, yes.
Did you kidnap Mr. Scrooge?
Oh, heavens, no.
Objection.
Sustained.
She's lying.
Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge certainly said he
Mr.
did.
Scrooge is mistaken.
She's lying.
Sit down, Mr. Scrooge.
Let's say you did kidnap Mr. Scrooge.
But I didn't.
I know.
Then why did you say I did?
For the sake of argument,
I'd rather not argue.
I'm just trying to make a point.
Oh. Right. Go on.
Let's say you came into Mr. Scrooge's room and kidnapped him. What'd you tie him up with? Rope?
No.
Sheets?
No.
Chains like Mr. Marley's?
No. I did not tie up Mr. Scrooge.
Did you hold his arms and legs so he couldn't move?
No.
Throw him in a sack?
No.
Knock him unconscious?
No.
Did you use some secret ghostly power to immobilize him?
No.
I'm confused.
And that's not surprising.
Mr. Scrooge alleges that you kidnapped him. How did you force him to go with you?
I did not force Mr. Scrooge. I simply touched his heart.
Something I'm sure Mr. Scrooge hasn't felt in years.
Objection.
Sustained.
Mr. Scrooge, the ghost of Christmas past, while you were with Mr. Scrooge, was he ever in danger of dying?
No.
Why not?
Well, you see, he needed only extinguish me with this hat.
That's a powerful hat.
I'm a powerful ghost.
Uh-huh. Not as gentle as she looks, huh?
Mr. Scrooge.
How does that hat work?
It extinguishes my light,
Your light?
the light of one's past.
And that's where you took Mr. Scrooge, is it not? To revisit his past?
Too often we forget our past and who we truly are.
Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, Mr. Scrooge's past. First slide, please. Past, could you tell us what we're looking at here?
Mr. Scrooge was a boy in this place. He was bred here.
And this is where you took him on the night in question?
Yes.
You walked along this road?
Yes.
How far did you walk?
We walked until we reached the little market town in the distance with its church, its bridge, and its winding river.
Who are the boys?
Those are Mr. Scrooge's schoolboy friends.
Did Mr. Scrooge see these boys on the night in question?
Yes, he did.
Was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Did his cold eyes glisten, his heart leap as they passed? Was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas?
His lip trembled and a tear rolled down his cheek.
It was a pimple.
For the record, what are the boys' names?
I do not know.
The one on the left is Tommy Foster. The one in the red scarf is Francis Riley. And the one throwing the snowball is Michael Thatcher.
Thank you, Mr. Scrooge. And where is Mr. Scrooge?
The school is not quite deserted.
No more questions, Your Honor. I'd like to call to the stand Miss Fan Fitzpatrick.
You may step down. Miss
Fa-
Fan Fitzpatrick.
Fan?
Would you please state your full name for the court?
Fan Scrooge Fitzpatrick.
Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
Please call me Fan.
Thank you, Fan. What is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
He's my brother.
Next slide, please. Fan, do you recognize this place?
It's where Ebenezer went to school.
And for how many years did Ebenezer attend this school?
12.
Next slide, please. Fan, could you please tell us who this solitary child is?
It's Ebenezer.
And why is he neglected by his family and friends at Christmas?
He was never neglected.
But do you agree that this picture shows Ebenezer to be all alone at the schoolhouse while all of the other boys have gone home for the holidays?
Yes.
And why is he all alone at Christmas?
Father wouldn't permit him to come home.
For how many years was Ebenezer not permitted to come home?
11.
And he attended the school for 12 years.
Yes.
11 out of 12 Christmases he wasn't permitted to come home? Seems to me he was neglected most of his childhood.
Never in my heart.
Why didn't your father permit him to come home?
Well, when my mother died, Father became awful to live with, always angry and unreasonable. He sent Ebenezer away to school, and he would have sent me as well, I'm sure, but Father needed someone to do all the cooking and cleaning.
Did you ever ask your father if Ebenezer could come home?
Every Christmas, and each time he would just yell and say no.
What happened that 12th year?
Father said yes.
Why did your father finally say yes?
I've never known. That night he yelled at me, but the next morning he came into my room and spoke so gently. He kissed me on the forehead and said they had done it all in one night. He put me on a coach immediately to bring Ebenezer home.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Fan, my dear little sister, you had such a large heart. I have no questions.
I'd like to call to the stand Miss Belinda Worthington.
Mrs. Belinda Worthington.
Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
Belinda Campbell Worthington. My friends call me Belle.
Belle.
Belle, what is your relationship to Mr. Scrooge?
I was engaged to him once.
For how long were you and Mr. Scrooge engaged?
Our contract to marry was an old one.
But you never married?
Never married Mr. Scrooge, no.
Why not?
Another idol displaced me.
Another woman?
A golden idol. Money.
Did Mr. Scrooge always have a love for money?
When we were engaged, we were both poor and content to be so, but I watched as his nobler aspirations fell off one by one until his passion for me ceased to exist, and the master passion, gain, engrossed him.
How did that make you feel?
Unloved, fraught with misery.
So how did it end between the two of you?
Knowing that I was no longer loved, I released him from our promise to marry.
What was Mr. Scrooge's reaction?
Indifference, relief,
And how did that make you feel?
broken-hearted. I loved Ebenezer once.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Miss Worthington? When did that happen?
A few years after.
After you released me?
Yes.
Did I ever ask to be released?
In words? No.
In what, then?
If we had not had a contract to marry, would you have sought me out and tried to win me?
Miss Campbell.
Mrs. Worthington.
Miss Worthington, please answer the question. If I didn't ask for release in words, in what way did I ask for it then?
Am I to believe you would have chosen a girl without a dowry?
I believe I did choose a girl without a dowry.
Yes, you did, but you changed.
How so?
You began to weigh everything by gain.
I grew wiser, but I didn't change towards you.
When you asked for my hand, you were another man.
I was a boy.
Yes, you were a boy, but you changed. And if for a moment you were false to your one guiding principle, did I not know that repentance and regret would surely follow?
You made an assumption.
Objection.
No, I did not.
Badgering the witness.
I was
Overruled.
a boy.
Your own feelings tell that you're not what you are.
What am I then?
A lonely old man intent on nothing but the pursuit of wealth.
This is the even-handed dealing of the world. There is nothing that it professes more as hard as poverty, and there's nothing that it condemns the most than the pursuit of wealth.
Objection, Your Honor, can't you
You
control
fear the
Tell me how
world
to
too
run my
much.
courtroom.
You made an assumption.
No, I did not.
I was a boy.
Your own feelings tell you that you are not what you are.
I was providing a future for your well-being.
My well-being meant little. To you, very little. I was merely an unprofitable dream.
You weren't an unprofitable dream. You were going to be my wife. You made an assumption and then you walked out on me.
Why didn't you stop me? If I meant so much to you, why did you let me walk away?
I don't know.
All these years, and you still don't know. You let me walk away because my heart wouldn't bring you monetary gain.
That's not the reason, Belle.
You didn't love me anymore.
I did love you, and I still do.
Why didn't you say that then?
I don't know. I was a fool. No more questions. No more questions.
Mr. Scrooge in my chambers immediately. 15-minute recess.
All rise. The Honorable Stansfield R. Pearson.
Be seated. Court is now in session. I trust there will be no more interruptions, and we may continue this trial in an orderly fashion. Mr. Rothschild, your witness.
Let's call to the stand the ghost of Christmas present.
The ghost of Christmas present. Will the ghost of Christmas present please come forward?
I just saw him outside.
Mr. Connolly, find him. Would you like to call another witness?
I'll wait.
I'd like to.
Mr. Scrooge,
It's fine, Your Honor.
I'd like to call back to the stand Miss Fitzpatrick.
Miss Fitzpatrick?
Miss Fitzpatrick, on the night in question when I was in the grasps of the ghost of Christmas,
Objection.
Sustained.
when I was with the ghost of Christmas present, where were you?
In my home,
And what were you doing?
hosting a Christmas party.
The Christmas party which I was invited to?
Yes.
Who was all at this party?
Friends, family, my husband's family.
What do they do for a living?
They're mostly businessmen.
Successful businessmen?
I'd say so.
I found him, but he.
In a minute.
But.
Mr. Connolly. Mr. Scrooge, please continue.
At this party, did you play any games?
Yeah, we played Coach to Dover, How, When, Where, and Blind Man's Buff.
Did you play yes and no?
Yes, we did.
Yes and no, my favorite.
Would you? Shh.
Did you choose the topic that night?
Yes,
Was the topic a person?
it was.
And did anyone ask if it was a person?
Yes.
And what was your answer?
No.
Even though you knew that to be the incorrect answer?
Yes.
Did anyone ask if it was an animal?
Yes.
And what was the correct answer?
The answer was no, but I said yes.
Oh. Did you continue to lie to your family?
Objection.
Overruled.
Did you continue to lie to your
Objection. It's a child's game.
Down,
Did
gentlemen.
you continue to lie to your
This
family
has
and
nothing
friends?
to do with what we're talking
It
about.
has everything to do with it, gentlemen, for the sake of Mr. Solomon. The events that took place that night were seared into my memory. Now, is it alive?
Yes.
Miss Fitzpatrick, please state the answer you gave that night. Is it alive?
Barely.
Ah. Is it tame?
No.
Is it a wild beast?
Yes.
Oh, does it roar?
Yes.
Does it growl?
Yes.
Is it a lion?
No.
Is it a tiger?
No.
Is it a bear?
No.
Oh my.
Is it a pig? Sorry, pigs don't roar.
Mr. Connolly.
Is it in London?
Yes.
Oh, is it in a zoo?
No.
Oh, in a cage, surely.
No.
Oh, so does it roam the streets?
Yes.
Oh, is it old?
Yes.
Is it ugly?
Yes.
Is it rich?
Yes.
I know what it is. It's Mr. Scrooge. What? It is, isn't it?
Is that the correct answer?
Yes.
An old, ugly, wild beast.
It was just a game.
To you, perhaps, but you're using my name, my reputation. Now, who at this party will ever want to do business with me? None, as long as you keep on perpetuating the false image of me as an old, ugly, wild beast. No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness.
Fred, did you play any other games that night than yes and no?
Like I told Mr. Scrooge, we played Coach to Dover and Blind Man's Buff.
Blind Man's Buff. Is it buff or bluff?
Buff.
I always thought it was bluff.
Most people do, but it's Buff.
You're sure?
I'm positive. You can look it up if you like.
Oh, I trust you. How do you play Blind Man's Buff again?
A person's blindfolded and then they're spun around so that they're disoriented and then they have to try and catch somebody.
Is it fun?
It's a great deal of fun, yes.
Let me ask you this, Fred, and I need you to answer truthfully. When you played Blind Man's Buff, was it merely for fun or, as the name suggests, were you making fun of the blind?
My God, no, it was all in good fun.
Was it?
Of course.
You and your friends weren't sitting around laughing at the expense of the blind man?
How could you say such a
Taking
thing?
delight in the blind man stumbling about, in the buff bumping into furniture, tripping over rugs?
Never.
Oh, look, the naked blind man can't see. How funny.
What are you saying?
How will the blind ever get ahead in this world if people like you perpetuate the image of the blind man as a clumsy, inept jester?
I wasn't.
There are heavy penalties, Fred, for that kind of behavior.
We weren't.
Fines?
How can you
Prison time? Maybe I should just gouge out your eyes so you know what it feels like!
Whoa! This is absolutely preposterous. They weren't perpetuating or ridiculing anyone that night. It was a child's game, and I was there. It's merely a child's game.
Precisely. And no one was ridiculing Mr. Scrooge or perpetuating a false image of him when they played yes and no. That, too, was all in good fun. No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Mr. Rothschild?
I'd like to call to the stand Mr. Robert Cratchit.
Mr. Robert Cratchit?
Bob, when you began working at Scrooge and Marley's 10 years ago, what was your salary?
15 shillings a week.
Were you able to live on that?
We made do.
By we, who do you mean?
My family.
At the time, how big was your family?
It was my wife, myself, and 2 children.
A family of 4 on 15 shillings?
Yes, sir.
How are you able to do that?
It wasn't easy.
Well, on the night in question, how big was your family?
It was my wife, myself, and 6 children.
And how much were you making by then at Scrooge?
15 shillings a week.
You worked at Scrooge and Marley's for 10 years and never once received a raise?
That's correct.
Did you ever receive a Christmas bonus?
No.
After Mr. Marley's death, did Mr. Scrooge ever talk to you about becoming a partner?
I asked him about that once, but he said it would cost too much money to change the sign.
The sign?
Scrooge and Marley.
That's right, he never painted out old Marley's name, did he?
No, it still says Scrooge and Marley.
Doesn't that confuse people?
Sometimes people new to the business call him Mr. Scrooge, and sometimes Mr. Marley, but he answers to both.
So you were supporting a wife and 6 children on 15 shillings a week with no hope for a raise or becoming a partner?
Yes, sir.
How were you able to do that?
As I said, it wasn't easy.
I'd say it's nearly impossible.
Objection!
Overruled.
But he...
Mr. Scrooge.
Bob, I want to talk to you about your youngest child.
Tim.
Yes, but you have a nickname for him, don't you?
Tiny Tim.
I'm assuming because he's tiny.
He's as sharp as a tennis ball.
Mr. Scrooge.
Yes, he's small for his age.
Any particular reason why?
He was born prematurely and remained ill.
On the night in question, how ill was Tiny Tim?
Quite ill.
Was he dying?
Yes, sir.
Did he know it?
I think so.
Did it scare him?
He never said that, but he did say to me once that he hoped people saw him in church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Tim was a cripple?
He had grown so weak he was forced to use a crutch.
Did you seek medical help?
He couldn't afford it.
So you chose to
Wait and pray.
wait and pray. Your Honor, I'd like to submit as evidence Exhibit B, Tiny Tim's crutch. Your Honor, if Tiny Tim's life continued on the path that it was on, this is all that would have remained of him. The only thing sadder than a little boy forced to use a crutch is a crutch without an owner. It isn't pretty, but this is what a world without pity can do. Bob, your first day back after the night in question, did you notice a change in Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, he was a completely new person. Happy, kind.
How did that kindness manifest itself?
We burned more coal that day than we had all year. He gave me a substantial raise and offered to help Tiny Tim.
Helped him how?
Pay for all his medical treatment. Give him the best care. For a time, he was a second father to Tim.
And how is Tim today?
As good as gold and better. He did not die and no longer needs his crutch to walk.
You say that the change in Mr. Scrooge saved Tim's life?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Mr. Cratchit, before the night in question, have you ever been to debtor's prison?
No, sir.
Have you ever been thrown in jail for not being able to pay your bills?
No, sir.
Have you ever been forced to sleep in the middle of the street?
No, sir.
Have you ever not been able to provide food for your family?
No, sir, but it's
What
not
did you do during the day, Mr. Cratchit?
during the day I work for you.
And at night?
I spent my night at home with my family.
According to Miss Wainwright, who has extensive knowledge on the poor, she says that thousands are in want for common necessities, and hundreds of thousands are in common or in want for common comforts. Before the night in question, do you believe that you fit this margin?
No, sir.
I didn't either. I mean, you had a family, you had able to supply food, you had a house, you had a job, you had a consistent pay.
Yes, sir, but I have 6 children.
Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you had them. No more questions.
You may step down, Mr. Cratchit. Mr. Solomon?
I'd like to call to the stand the Ghost of Christmas Present.
The Ghost of Christmas Present? Where did he go?
He got away.
Got away? How?
1 minute he was telling people to touch his robe, and the next he was gone.
Mr. Connolly, ghosts don't just vanish. Well, it's Scotland Yard's problem now. Mr. Connolly, now. Mr. Rothschild?
I'll wait.
Very well.
I'd like to call to the stand Miss Harriet Dilber.
Mrs. Harriet Dilber?
Delightful. Miss, will you please state your full name for the court?
Harriet Penelope Dilber.
On the night in question, where were you?
About.
Specifically.
Cousin I.
Miss Dilber, on the night in question, did you enter my bedroom?
Don't flatter yourself.
Did you enter my bedroom on the intent of pilfering my goods?
What kind of a lady do you think I am?
The pilfering kind.
Well, I'll have you know I haven't pilfered anything in years. Me pilfering days are behind me.
Well, old
That's
Joe
nice.
thinks differently.
Well, old Joe's got a big mouth, he does.
So you admit it?
Well, maybe just a quickie pilfer.
And what exactly did you pilfer?
Now that's getting a bit personal now, ain't it? I mean, it's not very ladylike to talk about pilfering in public, don't you think?
Mrs. Dilber, are you aware of what the word pilfer means?
Well, if you don't know what it means by now, I ain't gonna tell you. What's it mean again?
To steal.
Go on! Really? You mean it's not. In all these years, I thought it meant something else.
So, let me ask you again. On the night in question, did you enter my bedroom on the intent of stealing my goods?
Well, yeah, I went into your place and pilfered everything I could get me hands on.
What exactly did you pilfer?
I can't quite remember. Me memory ain't what it used to be.
Well, let me see if I can jog your memory. In old Joe's deposition, he says, she came into me shop singing Old Scratch has finally kicked the bucket. She undid her bundle and out fell his gloves, leather boots, blankets, bed curtains, rings and all. Also a shirt. Fine cotton it was.
They were gonna ruin a perfectly good shirt.
Ruin?
They were gonna bury you in it.
You took that shirt off my dead body?
Of course! It was a fine cotton shirt. I couldn't see it go to waste. I took it off your body and I dressed you in calico. That's enough for your cold bones.
No more questions.
Mr. Solomon, your witness?
Mrs. Dilber, may I call you?
You can call me anything you like, love.
Thank you. Harriet?
How about calling me yours?
Harriet,
Such a gentleman.
Harriet, where do you live?
Well, you're a fast one, you are.
Where do you sleep each night?
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, I would.
You're pilfering me out, ain't you?
Harriet, do you know Sarah Wainwright?
Maybe.
How long have you known her?
Few years.
And how did you two meet?
At a party.
Was it snowing that night? That was you standing out in the cold, wasn't it? How's your family?
Cold took 'em.
When?
A few days after the party.
Where do you live now?
Wherever.
How often do you see Sarah Wainwright?
Every Christmas. And I look forward to it every year. She's like family. Only family I got.
Harriet, why did you steal Mr. Scrooge's belongings?
Well, you know a better way.
Yes, it's called getting a job.
Are you gonna hire me?
No more questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Hang on, that's my bag.
It's mine now, you rat!
So who wants to call a witness now?
I'd like to call to the stand the ghost of Christmas yet to come.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come?
Since the ghost of Christmas yet to come does not possess a normal voice box, we've engaged a court-appointed translator who speaks ghost. Thank you for being here. Would you please state your full name for the court, please?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come.
Ghost of Christmas yet to come, may I call you Future?
Please.
Future, did you visit Mr. Scrooge on the night in question?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of your visit?
Redemption.
He tried to kill me.
Mr. Scrooge, sit down.
Go ahead, ask him, ask him.
Mr. Scrooge!
Did you try to kill Mr. Scrooge?
No.
The liar!
Could he not shout like that? It hurts my ears.
Murderer!
Why is he doing this to me?
Because you tried to kill me!
I've never killed anyone in my life.
He's lying!
I'd like to kill him right now, though.
He's not the only one. Sit down, Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge says you tried to kill him.
Mr. Scrooge can kiss my spectral cookies.
But why would Mr. Scrooge say a thing like that?
Because he's a putz.
Objection!
Overruled.
But he can't.
The witness is entitled to their own opinions.
Oh, that wasn't his opinion. It was mine. I'm sorry.
Future, did you kidnap Mr. Scrooge?
No.
Well, was Mr. Scrooge ever in danger of dying?
The only one in danger of dying that night was me. I nearly froze my hungers off that night. Look at this. I've seen toilet paper thicker than this. This wouldn't keep a pig on a spit warm. You'd think they'd spring for something with a bit of insulation, but no. Christmas present has enough fat on him to keep a tribe of Eskimos warm for a lifetime, and they give him a wool suit.
As best you can remember, what happened on the night in question?
I'm freezing now, as a matter of fact. Could someone put some more wood on, please?
Mr. Connolly, it is warm enough in here.
But
Please continue, Mr. Rothschild.
But my client...
Your client should have dressed for the weather.
So you didn't kidnap Mr. Scrooge. What prevented him from escaping?
Nothing.
Are you confused, Mr. Rothschild?
Yes, I'm a little confused that nothing prevented him from escaping. Can I just take one moment, Your Honor?
I don't like when you take moments. You know that!
I came here representing myself. and I'm
Mr.
better prepared.
Scrooge!
It's my opinion.
Your opinion really doesn't
I'm
matter
back,
in this
Your Honor.
court. Continue.
My bad. Where did you take Mr. Scrooge on the night in question?
To see his future.
Mr. Scrooge's future, he didn't change his ways, is that correct?
Yes.
And what was his future like?
Cold, overcast, gloomy. Hello, welcome to England. The sun never sets my eye, the sun never rises. I hate England. It's cold and it's damp.
Besides the weather, what was his future like?
Well, it was pretty bad.
Well, how bad?
He was dead to begin with.
Dead?
Yep.
How far into the future did you take him?
About 4 days.
That's hardly the future.
He didn't have much of a future left.
Are you saying that on the day in question, if Mr. Scrooge didn't change his ways, he would be dead in 4 days?
Give or take a couple of hours.
Well, did your visit have any effect on Mr. Scrooge?
He cried like a baby and promised to keep Christmas in his heart all the year.
He did?
Blubbered and bawled his head off.
He promised to keep Christmas in his heart all the year?
A promise he made on his knees.
I see. No more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Scrooge, your witness.
Earlier, Mr. Marley expressed his frustration with not being able to schedule an appointment. A 7-year wait, that's quite a long time. It's quite a workload. Have you... When do you work?
We're off from Christmas Day until Christmas Eve.
You work only 1 day out of the year? Have you ever considered taking more hours?
We're the ghosts of Christmas. We only come once a year.
On the night in question, did you enter my bedroom?
Yes.
And why did you enter the bedroom?
Is it hot in here?
Answer the question.
Could someone open a window? I'm burning up.
Answer the question.
I'm thirsty too. I'm hot and thirsty. Great, I've got cholera.
You took me to my bedroom that night to show me this, Exhibit C. My dead body! Did you or did you not show me this on the night in question?
Yes, but it wasn't...
Did you continually point at it to get me to pull back the sheet?
Yes, but it wasn't...
Subjecting me to see my own dead body, therefore inducing me to have a heart attack?
No.
Liar!
I didn't do it.
There was no one else in the room that night.
It wasn't me.
There was no one else in the room that night.
Look there.
Oh, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to finish what you couldn't finish a year ago today. And you know what? I won't do it. I will not pull back that curtain. I will not.
Mr. Scrooge, pull it back!
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying pull it back!
Pull
it back!
I haven't the power.
You may not, but I do! Mr. Connolly.
I don't...
No!
No! Merciful heaven, Jacob!
Mr. Mr. Marley, what is the meaning of this?
Where's my dead body?
Mr. Marley, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body?
Does anybody have any smelling salts?
Never mind that. Where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body?
It was under the sheet.
Did you see it under the sheet?
No, I just thought.
Mr. Connolly, what do I pay you for?
Well, I sweep the floors.
Mr. Marley, that was a rhetorical question. Mr. Marley! Mr. Marley, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body? Arrest him, Mr. Connolly!
But
Your
Now!
Honor, my client.
Your client has stolen evidence!
I'm sure there's a logical explanation.
I'd like to see it.
Of course, Your Honor. Jacob, where's Mr. Scrooge's dead body? Future? Oh, you're useless. Christmas past? Past. Good. You haven't seen Mr. Scrooge's dead body lying around anywhere, have you? Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess.
Not until your clients tell us what they did with Mr. Scrooge's dead body.
My clients may have had nothing to do with the disappearance.
Mr. Marley was laying under the sheet where Mr. Scrooge's dead body should have been.
He has testified to getting no sleep and no rest. Perhaps he just needed a quick cat nap.
If your clients don't tell us what they did with Mr. Scrooge's dead body this instant, I'll have the lot of you arrested for contempt. Now, for the last time, where is Mr. Scrooge's dead body?
There is no dead body.
What?
There was never a dead body.
But I saw my dead body that night.
It wasn't your dead body.
Then who or what was under the sheet that night? Jacob. Bone and double
Don't you touch him!
Treasonous war!
Order!
Scum! Lily liver!
Order! Order! Where is the meaning of this?
He forced us to do it!
I didn't!
Liar!
I said
Force!
our best chance! Force you to do
He
what?
forced us to break the rules!
Rules? What rules?
When we show someone their future, we're not allowed to use a dead body.
You're not allowed to use a dead body!
No, tombstones, yes, but dead bodies, no. But Mr. Marley didn't think that a tombstone would be enough to scare Mr. Scrooge into changing his ways. So
I didn't.
he forced us to use a dead body.
No, I
Forced!
Force.
So that was you under my bedsheet that night? Did you fabricate anything else that night?
Technically, your entire future.
My entire future?
It was an approximation.
You approximated my entire future?
We approximate everyone's future.
That wasn't my future?
We're ghosts. We speculate. That's where the word specter comes from.
So on the night in question, you intentionally deceived and frightened me in order to change my ways with a counterfeit corpse and a forfeit future?
It was for your own good.
Mr. Marley, you and your hooligan friends are nothing but self-righteous, double-dealing charlatans who do nothing but terrorize people in the name of redemption!
Down, Mr. Scrooge!
Your Honor.
You too, gentlemen!
But Your Honor.
Not another word!
Solomon!
Not another word! Now sit down! All of you!
Sorry.
In all my years, I have never witnessed a more reprehensible assemblage. You have collectively made a mockery of my courtroom with your impertinent and abhorrent behavior. If I could work my will, I would have all of you boiled in your own pudding and buried with a stick of holly through your hearts.
Surely you don't mean that.
And you'd be the first! There will be no closing arguments. I have heard more than enough to pass judgment. Although Mr. Scrooge failed to present overwhelming evidence that anyone living or deceased, attempted to kidnap or murder him, he did provide, in a rather uncustomary way, evidence of breaking and entering, trespassing, stalking, slander, theft, and the intentional infliction of emotional destruction. Furthermore, I found overwhelming evidence that Mr. Marley and his own account carefully plotted, contrived, and conspired the events of the night in question. And without his careful contrivance and comprise, I would not have witnessed those events that occurred. Therefore, I find Mr. Marley and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future guilty on all accounts, and sentence them to a fine of 1,000 pounds apiece, and termination of all ghostly duties.
I've won?
Yes.
I've won! I'm so happy. I don't know what to contain myself. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as happy as a cloud. I'm as giddy as a goose.
Take your giddiness elsewhere. This court is...
Your Honor, termination?
Effective immediately.
You can't terminate my clients from their spiritual obligation.
I just did, didn't I?
But they'll cease to exist. It's a death sentence.
It won't be much of a change for them, will it?
Your Honor, please reconsider. Community time. They'll pay twice the fine, triple, anything but termination.
That's enough. I've made my decision. This court is...
But, Your Honor, Mr. Scrooge made a promise, a verbal agreement.
Yes, a promise that I made on my knees to keep the spirits of Christmas in my heart all the year.
You've broken that verbal agreement.
On the contrary, the spirits in my heart have thrived with me.
I beg to differ.
Oh, well, Mr. Cratchit, thanks to me, is the highest pay of London, I dare say. Old Tiny Tim will become enormous Tiny Tim. I've patted children on the head, I've given to the poor, and I've been irresistibly pleasant.
The lessons of the spirits of Christmas worked.
But why should I keep the spirits of Christmas in my heart all the year, or at all for the matter, if the people who taught it to me didn't do it themselves?
They don't fail to keep it.
They, by their own admission, they only show up once a year.
Yes, because Christmas comes only once a year.
That's a poor man's excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December.
If you think charity, mercy, and benevolence is picking your pocket...
You forget, gentlemen, you two have lost this trial.
Mr.
Your
Scrooge,
Honor.
I beg you, a world without the spirits of Christmas is...
January through November. What's one more month?
Your Honor, please.
That's enough. My court is...
Wait!
What?
Why?
I'll tell you what, gentlemen. I'll make you an offer. I'll drop all charges if your clients agree to work in more than 1 day a year.
Are you serious?
Yes, quite serious.
Thank you, Mr. Scrooge, thank you. My clients will be more than willing to double their workload.
Oh, no. 2 days possibly would not do.
How many days will do?
Let's see. How about every day?
Every day?
Yes?
Mr. Scrooge, please be reasonable.
Oh, I am being reasonable.
But you're demanding of my clients.
I'm demanding of your clients exactly what they demanded of me.
But, Mr. Scrooge...
Now, gentlemen, or your clients cease to exist.
We'll need several days to discuss this with our clients.
Well, they're all right here.
But Christmas present isn't present.
Now, gentlemen, or I rescind my offer.
It's too late. I've made my decision. This court is...
Wait!
Mr. Scrooge, it's a bargain.
You agree my terms?
We do.
They'll thrive every day.
They will.
Effective immediately.
Effective immediately. And all charges are dropped?
All charges are dropped, except I get to keep the money.
You said all charges.
Yes, all charges, but the money.
Mr. Scrooge, this is not...
So I might start a fund for the poor.
What?
Yes, I believe that Miss Wainwright will make a beautiful executive, and Miss Dilber will make a fantastic overpaid clerk.
Mr. Scrooge, are you well?
Oh, quite well. Gentlemen, you see, you aren't the only who had to go through extraordinary measures.
What?
Extraordinary measures. I mean, I actually had all of you believe that I was the man I was before, but, I mean, not the man I was before, but the man I was before, but I had to convince everyone that I was the man I was before, or nothing wonderful would have come to this trial, but I'm not the man I was before. I mean, I'm not. Merriest to Christmas, the merriest Christmas of all the land.
you mean this whole trial is...
Extraordinary measures.
Mr. Scrooge, I don't know what to say.
Don't say anything at all, then.
Mr. Scrooge, you really are as good a man and as good a friend as the good old world could ever ask
Well, a
for.
promise is a promise, right, Jacob? Now, gentlemen, may we say that we keep the the spirit of caring and generosity within our hearts all the year.
God bless us, everyone.
Remarkable boy. Now I'd like all of you to come to my house for a wonderful party with wonderful games and wonderful happiness.
You always were a good man of business, Ebenezer.
Oh, mankind is my business, Jacob. You taught me that. Sometimes I just need a swift kick in the pants. Don't you agree, Your Honor?
All retire to Bedlam. I suppose you'll want the entire day tomorrow.
If convenient.
It's not convenient. The day after the next, we begin Twist versus Bumble, but I suppose you'll want the entire day. Be here all the earlier the next.
Thank you, sir. Merry Christmas.
Who's there? We're close!